Okay, so we're going to begin chapter 3 and 4 with a discussion of the lab, right? And that's going to be because on Friday, you're going to come in, you'll have worn athletic apparel to lab, and you're going to see that we have a series of things to do that have to be measured. And using the skills you acquired for the first 3 attempts to collect data and analyze data, we're going to apply that now to what does it mean to create an understanding of the amount of expenditure if forces are applied to objects. Let me see if I can draw this out for you. New whiteboard, open and collaborate. Okay, so I'm hoping you guys can see this. And the idea, of course, is that in chapters 1 and 2, right, we have this idea that let's see, colors. If at some point in time this thing blew up, right, we ended up with something here, we ended up with something, let's go here, ended up with something, let's go green, so we know what we're talking about here. Okay, let's go over there. Somehow I managed to pick that one properly. Okay, and the idea, of course, is this is the actual solar system, where this is the sun, the celestial bodies that are moving around it. And if this occurred, let's go 14 billion years ago, let's go 14 billion or so, remembering that time is one of those things that moves forward, because to go backwards requires somehow unpacking energy backwards. And that is really a difficult concept for a lot of people to recognize. You can come up with these ideas where you can loop back through time if you have this thing is called a wormhole. And, remember, anything that's put inside a wormhole gets squished flatter than a grape. So point being, right, is that if you have this understanding that some distance away from here, and let's say that this is the distance, you want to start thinking about what that actually looks like, feels like regularly. And when we get into waves and movement, you're going to see how it is that this has an ellipse, E for ellipse, and that ellipse with its own celestial body, our own moon, has a different series of periodicities. Big fancy words. Yay, who cares? Let's see, text. What I want people to be thinking about, what I'm hoping you're thinking about, is that if we have objects that we can now describe D-S-C-R-I-B-E, okay, we can describe, say, a shape. Okay, let me put in brackets here, shape, P-E. And maybe from your lab, what you saw was that if you have, say, something with a high density, E-N-S-I-T-Y, and there is a uniform force acting on it, uniform force that is acting on it, then you can see a behavior that was the resultant sort of effect, right? Where if you took your paper clip and you put it at the end of the what do you want to call it? The meter stick, right? That meter stick would now be the height above the solid surface. You release it, you made a movie of it, you timed it, and lo and behold, you got a piece of data that should, if we had all the time in the world, you should be able to derive the gravitational attraction of the paperclip. I'm just going to paperclip by the center of mass. So just go center of mass, okay, of the planet. Okay, planet. Okay, and on your take home, the daily problem sets from last week, what I wanted people to do is take what does the universal law of gravitation now mean to something as simple as a paperclip? Because this is its illustration here, right? Paperclip is dropped, falls to the center of the mass of Earth. Earth has its own center of mass relative to the center of the mass of the moon, and the center of the mass of the moon and the Earth relative to the center of mass of the sun and all of the other bodies that are around it. And you can begin to describe this, right? So what does that have to do with this week? Well, we still have one more thing to consider before we consider this week, and that was, well, then you made a structure that had a gradient of densities, right? And I made a big deal out of that. Hopefully you paid attention to that, where the actual helicopter itself, helicopter, okay, is paper, P-A-P-E-R, and I saw some interesting solutions to figuring out the density of the paper itself, and you'll notice at the wings, it should have been its least dense, L-E-A-S-T, dense, but most surface area, okay, and that would significance being, of course, that most surface area interacts with the largest number of molecules as the gravitational force is pushing or pulling your now deployed helicopter from the end of that meter stick. Now, these are all terrifically difficult mathematical problems to solve. But intuitively, you can see what happened, right? Remember, this looks kind of similar to what you saw on the floor. Take a look, here's the sun. You dropped it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, right? You got to 7, and you're like, my God, it's not behaving how I thought it would act, because what most people struggled with was the uniform release of the helicopter in a way where you did not impart any undue force onto the helicopter. Doesn't mean you can't get a data set. Doesn't mean you can't describe it. Doesn't mean you can't tell me what the 8th one will look like. Likewise, when you took somebody else's helicopter, you dropped it 5 times. Remember, the helicopter was designed differently. You should be able to describe how the design was different, and then maybe use some of that information, nudge, nudge, hint, hint, wink, wink, on your midterm to figure out why you saw the behaviors that you saw. Are they reasonable? Are they reasonable interpretations of what it is you're looking at? And that's where the energy piece comes in, right? Okay, so when you release something, you're letting the sum of the forces of that object that being acted upon by gravitational attraction to pull that helicopter to the ground, and it fell at a different rate each time. You average them together, you get a sort of like this sort of description of something that looks like a consistent behavior. Now, I need you to understand what that means. So by consistent, what do I mean? Consistent, S-I-S-T-A-N-T, consistent. Problem with being dyslexic, guys, is you don't know what the correct spelling is of things most of the time. Consistent behavior. Imagine, if you will, there is a range for most events that can be MEASURED with the tools that we have. So I'm going to put in double brackets here, with tools that we can use, okay? I'm going to posit to you that Mother Nature, in her infinite wisdom, has many tools we have no knowledge of that make sense of how it is Mother Nature will use energy, okay? Mother Nature will use energy to propel things in this forward vector, right? Because if I come over here and I'm now in red, let's put another line here, right? Let's go red, come up here. Let's go red, closer to it. So this is our forward effort in time and interactions with matter, okay, such that if energy is required, then we can begin to describe it. So what do I mean by this? So it takes a specific force, okay, to act on an object. So let's go force plus object, object to equal, we're just going to put 2 question marks here. Okay, because remember a moment ago I said if we have tools we can measure that, but remember it has to be within a range that we can actually see. There'll be, if we had all the time in the world, we'd go all the way back to, if there is no energy added into a system, is there still movement? And I'm going to tell you that there is, in the unique environments where that is allowed. mean, the way the textbook is set up, we're not invited into the atomic structures yet. Right now, we are asking you to learn how to use the tools that you have, your eyes, your ears, your five senses, if you will, and recognize that, hey, that's what Mother Nature's talking about. Measures the tools we can use. Some people are going to get bored by this idea. Maybe you had some like advanced placement physics class and you had all the bells and whistles inside the lab, and you were limited by what the bells and whistles of those things can do. Whereas in this class, I'm not limited because I've got an imagination, right? So if you can think to yourself, what does it mean to actually move an object? The most obvious object that needs to move is a body. And you're like, body of what? And guess what? It is your own body. Right? And each one of you will have a mass that will vary moment to moment. Have you eaten? Have you not eaten? What's the day of the week? Where are you in life? Are you on the younger end of the spectrum of days on the planet, or are you longer end of the spectrum on the days on the planet? And this body itself is not just a sum of what we would consider to be, how would I put it? The sum of mechanics, but those mechanics that are being acted upon by rules that we don't yet understand. But we can limit it to the basic physics we've seen so far. Okay, forget about the chemistry, forget about the biology, just think about the physics. And so a body at rest. Oh, a body at rest. Where have we heard that before? Okay. Okay, so a body at rest will remain at rest unless there's some force that's going to change that. We call that inertia, right? And that inertia can be changed, And this is where we get to, theory of mind immediately. You just jumped 14 billion years to a paper I was reading this morning about theory of mind and how it can be constructed and why it's constructed the way that it's constructed. When you understand that at its most basic level, what we're looking at is a series of electrons that are intermittently interacting with one another, maybe in a favorable way and maybe not. So inertia can be changed if you make up your mind to change your location of your body, which you're going to be told to do on Friday. I'm not going to tell you what the lab actually is, and it's a multiple week labs, right? So this week will be mostly about designing the lab. The following week will be about, and you should be able to actually execute something in its most basic form this week, right? Collect that data, repeat the data next week, see if there's a change in it. Notice the efficiency when you guys go from week to week. You're getting much better at communicating with one another, and now figuring out how to get everything to work together, which of course means we're going to change the groups. Okay. So that'll be one of the first things we do on Friday. So let's imagine we have energy. How do you measure energy? Right? And this is really hard. We can use thermometers for heat. We can use scales for how much force something is being moved, right? You're going to see that when I put up the textbook, which for whatever reason, Blackboard won't let me load right now for you guys. So I can't show you the picture. How did we come up with the definition of what? Let's put a text box here as text box. What is horsepower? Well, what is horsepower? Okay. People were asking, hey, how can we measure this thing that work can get done? If inertia is going to change the location of a piece of mass, and that mass has a specific gravitational force attached to it, which will give us our weight, and we use units that are either English or metric, what is the amount of work that can be done? Well, in the most curious of ways, if you average the weight of your quadruped horse, right, it comes out to roughly 550 pounds, right? And what happens is it's the amount of feet that the horse can move something without coming to stop. Okay, so it's foot pounds is what it's initially measured as, right? And then you can do foot pounds over time, right? And that's how horsepower came about. And I want you to think about something. When you're Most people don't tend to understand how their engines work inside their cars. But if I asked you to look at your automobile and say, well, how many horsepower is that? Or if you went out and you looked at your lawnmower and said, well, how many horsepower is that? I'm going to invite you guys to participate in something that the honors program is going to have to do. Those students are going to have to take something apart and put it back together again, right? So maybe we take apart an engine and we figure out how it works, or we take apart something where you can see that the energy that's required. What is the difference, say, between horsepower, which we don't have any horses on the college, but we've got them down the road in either direction, right? If you've never been on a horse, you never have felt power. I mean, ridden on a really strong horse, you don't, this concept that fine well you could be thrown from this thing, whereas inside your car it's a different design question altogether. So right, if you're driving to school each day, maybe look up what the horsepower of your automobile is. If you're taking the bus to school each day, what's the horsepower of your average transit bus, right? What's the horsepower of the train if you're coming in from some distant location? I know there's somebody who comes in from Danbury every Friday, right? That's a lot of work to get here. Okay, so think about what it means to transport somebody on a train, right? And then figure out, that's where efficiency costs come from. That's where people start asking questions. It's going to sound like it's a little off topic, but it's really not. If we have only so much energy in the universe, the law of conservation of energy states that can either be neither created nor destroyed. What we end up talking about is, if it is horsepower or if it's a train from Danbury to Norwalk, what is the conversion of energy that can be measured? And if reading the newspaper this morning, oil is at $4.40 a gallon. And if you're heating your house with oil and the winter is going to be treacherous, you have to allocate now. This is the analogy. Allocate now whatever dollars you have coming in to staying warm, because otherwise your body, your physical body, has to allocate energy, breaking down of bonds inside of it, so that it too can stay warm inside of a range that can be measured. And that measuring is pretty straightforward, right? If when you're cold, when you're hot. Makes sense? Okay, so I'm going to close with that. I'm going to close with, put another text box in here. Friday, meet at West 114 first. Okay. We're going to go over design and topics in both chapters 3 and 4. And we're getting, we're right on time. We're getting to this place where I need to start thinking about what light and wavelengths are and what some electricity is, and then we're done. We're at the midterm point, which should coordinate nicely with what's going on with Rana. And you guys have finished up through, what is it? You went from 141 to 200, right? So if I'm you guys are ready for a quiz on Friday. Okay, it won't be a hard quiz. It's going to be, multiple choice type thing or short answer. Probably most likely short answer, because I want to see how you guys write on the fly. So you'll have a quiz on philosophy, Phil, and Rana. Right? And what I would probably do as well is make sure that when you're showing up, the athletic apparel can get dirty and get DIRTY, right? So we'll be outside for a little while, and then we'll be inside for a little while, right? And then, because we're going to use these as the locations for you designing the experiment and then implementing it probably on the inside of the college. Okay, let's see. Friday, meet. We'll have a quiz. Great. You need to be able to dress to get dirty, so you can get dirty. Okay. And let's see what else. Oh, I would probably bring your lab books. Bring labs. While you guys are outside getting, well, I'll be out there with you for most of it. When you guys are doing the work on the inside, bring your labs, and I will provide total feedback to the class, right? To class after I have seen all of the efforts, right? And remember, the efforts at this point in time have been 1A, 1B, 1C, and you want to have preparations for each of those so that at the end you should have this packet of information that has all your raw data. It's going to have all of these labs. It's going to have the one-page summaries probably from all of them, right? So that'd be 3 one-page summaries. So you can see the progression of your thoughts and then how to use that information. Maybe you've even sort of created a spreadsheet that has analyzed some of this data. You put that in there. Make sure you've put it into the places you were supposed to put it inside the printed material, right? Which means now you've printed out something new on top of what you were originally given, right? And if you haven't asked for it, why? Okay, cool. Okay, be safe. I will see you guys on Friday. Bring labs. I'll provide feedback to the entire class, and I will actually show you. I will also show you 3 different types of lab books. And the point is that you're going to see these. Remember, I would keep a copy for yourself. You're leaving me a copy at the end of the semester of everything you've done, right? So you want to do this so you could recreate them yourselves, right? Should you ever take another class like this where you end up in a research lab or you end up doing this stuff on your own, and you have now a basic mechanism to hold all of this together. Okay, and that's where we're going to finish. I'm going to save this for myself. Export. Let's go PNG, see what happens there. Great, and then we're going to end. And I'm going to put this up on Blackboard for you so you guys are ready for Friday. Okay, be safe. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. Be safe.